What's the difference between a vegetarian and a vegan? And why would you ever want to become one? That's what we're here to talk about today. My name is Eugene and this is Verdant Growth. So recently I've been looking around online at vegetarian resources. I even had a vegetarian chat with my sister, who's a vegan. Looking around on the internet, I noticed that there's still quite a bit of confusion as to what the difference is between a vegetarian and a vegan. And while vegetarianism and veganism is growing in some parts of the world, in other parts of the world there are still a lot of places where people just don't understand why you would ever want to be vegetarian. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So first, let's talk about what is the difference between a vegetarian and a vegan. For centuries across time, humans have eaten different amounts of meat depending on the culture they come from. In some cultures, they have eaten a lot of meat, whereas some cultures can eat very little or no meat at all. The earliest records of vegetarianism go back to India in 6th century BC. So vegetarianism isn't something that has just come around recently as part of a new hippie trend. Vegetarianism has been around for centuries. So let's break it down. What's the difference between a vegetarian and a vegan? And what are the different types of vegetarianism? In the simplest terms, a vegetarian is someone who doesn't eat any animal flesh at all. That means no meat, no chicken, no seafood, and no insects, if you're into that kind of a thing. The things that are included in a vegetarian's diet may be fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts and seeds, eggs, dairy products like milk, cheese, and butter, and honey. Notice I said maybe, and there's a reason for that. Within the vegetarian bubble, there are a few different categories that you have to know. The least strict form of vegetarianism is called a lacto-ovo-vegetarian. These kinds of vegetarians don't eat any meat, so no meat, no poultry, no seafood, no insects. But they do allow themselves lacto, or dairy products, and eggs. The next type of vegetarian is the lacto-vegetarian. Like the lacto-ovo-vegetarians, they don't eat any meat, no poultry, no seafood, no insects, but they allow themselves to have lacto, dairy products, but no eggs. The opposite of the lacto-vegetarian is the ovo-vegetarian. These guys don't eat any meat, poultry, seafood, or insects, or dairy products. These guys allow themselves to eat eggs. And that brings us to vegans, the strictest form of the vegetarian diet. Vegans don't eat anything that comes from any animal whatsoever. That means no meat, no poultry, no seafood, no insects, no dairy, no eggs, and nothing that even comes from an animal like honey. Even though we're not directly taking the honey from bees themselves, the bees still produce honey and we are taking that honey for ourselves, and so those products are completely off limits to vegans. Vegans also restrict themselves from buying any non-consumable animal products as well. That means no animal skins like leather, fur, or wool, but it also means no soaps that are made from animal products. There are some other products that you would be really surprised to hear aren't vegan as well. One of them is gelatin. Gelatin is in a lot of products that you wouldn't expect. A lot of candy products, especially the gummy candy products, contain gelatin. A lot of products like chocolate mousse or puddings also often contain gelatin. Another no-no is figs. I am not going to go into details on why those aren't vegan. You can look that one up for yourselves. Pesto is another one. Pesto often contains animal rennet or cheese, so pesto is very often not vegan. Another mistake that a lot of vegans make is drinking wine. Wine is not vegan. But for all of these things, there are often vegan replacements for them. So if you look carefully, you can find vegan pestos and vegan wines. As long as we're talking about the different kinds of vegan and vegetarian diets, I might as well add two more kinds of diets that you might have heard of. The first is the pescatarian diet. The pescatarian diet is not a type of vegetarianism. Pescatarians don't allow themselves to eat meat or poultry, but they do allow themselves to eat fish. The other one that you might hear a lot these days is the flexitarian diet. The flexitarian diet is, again, not strictly a vegetarian diet. Instead, it's a kind of part-time vegetarian diet. Flexitarians will choose which meals they want to be vegetarian and which ones they don't want to be vegetarian. So for example, some flexitarians will just pick days of the week not to eat meat. So for example, Meatless Monday. If you've ever heard of Meatless Monday, that is where you just go all of Monday without eating any meat at all. Other flexitarians may just decide to choose one meal out of the day to be vegetarian. Maybe they make all their lunches vegetarian or all their dinners vegetarian. Next, let's talk about the reasons why someone might want to become vegetarian. There are a lot of good reasons to go vegetarian, but most vegetarians will fall into one of the following four categories: culture or religion, health, animal welfare, or scientific reasons like climate or your impact on the environment. Each of these subjects you could talk about for a long time. You could write entire books on each of these subjects, so I'm just going to go into each one into light detail today. First, culture and religion. Historically, vegetarianism has been linked most strongly with Buddhism. That means we've seen a lot of vegetarians historically in places like India and China. To this day, India sits as the country with the most vegetarianism. 38% of Indians are vegetarian. But unfortunately, while vegetarianism and veganism is on the rise in some countries like in America and in parts of Europe, it's on the decline in places like India and China. Overall, globally, the number of vegetarians in the world is decreasing. Next, the health benefits of becoming vegetarian. Keep in mind that a lot of the science on vegetarianism still isn't quite settled. There's a lot of debate and there's a lot of study being done to see whether it really is overall beneficial for you to go vegetarian. Keeping that in mind, let's take a look at some of the things that science has indicated may have a health impact on your body. Number 1, it is potentially more nutrient-rich. In general, a plant-based diet is going to contain a lot more variety of vitamins and minerals. Number 2, you may be able to reduce your weight. Generally, plants contain a lot less fat than animal products do, so that can lead to losing weight. Next, vegetarian diets have been linked with lower blood sugar levels and better kidney function. Some studies have also suggested that a vegetarian diet may greatly reduce your risk of certain types of cancer. Vegetables have also been shown to be rich in antioxidants, which has meant, in general, better heart health. So, while the studies aren't quite settled as to whether a vegetarian diet is definitely better than a meat-based diet, it does seem like there's a strong correlation between vegetarians and healthy lifestyles. Next, animal welfare. This is probably a category that doesn't need too much explanation. In order to eat animals, we have to kill animals. Even the most humane methods of slaughtering animals are only there to reduce suffering of animals, not eliminate it. Even dairy and other animal products that come from animals without killing them still involve using what a lot of people consider to be cruel practices. Small cages, dangerous living conditions, or painful extraction methods all mean that a lot of times, even if you're not killing the animal to get something like milk, you're still causing them stress, harm, or some other kind of suffering. So, to many vegetarians, the amount of pain and suffering that we cause to animals isn't worth the value of just getting something that tastes nice. To some people out there, they might say, but when I go to the supermarket, the meat is already there, it's already on the shelf. These animals have already suffered and died. If I don't buy this meat, it's just gonna rot, it's just gonna go bad. And I mean, someone's gotta eat it, right? But it's a little bit more complicated than that. This is what we call simple economics. By not buying meat, you reduce the demand for meat. And for every person whose demand for meat decreases, the farmers have to adjust their supply. Less people buying meat now means less meat being made in the future. What we buy matters, and what we choose not to buy will affect what ends up on the shelves. Lastly, let's talk about science. For many people, going vegetarian is a choice they make because of the effect on climate change. The livestock and dairy industry produces a huge amount of greenhouse gases, the biggest of which is methane gas. Methane gas is a greenhouse gas that can be 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And it is produced in massive amounts by cows. In short, as cows digest foods, they produce a lot of methane in their stomach, which eventually comes out in the form of burps or farts. And 95% of the emissions come from cow burps. That's right, we're slowly killing ourselves with climate change through cow burps. 15 to 20% of all global warming has been attributed to the livestock and dairy industries. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began in about 1760, the amount of methane in the atmosphere has increased by a lot. And 15 to 20% of the global warming we've seen so far has been attributed to that methane. That means if we were to just stop all meat and dairy production today, we would decrease the amount of global warming into the future by about 20%. Of course, going vegetarian is also more sustainable than eating meat. What does sustainable mean? It just means that it's something we can continue doing forever into the future. Producing meat is a very energy inefficient task. It takes a lot of energy just to produce a very small amount of meat. And as the population of the world increases, we just aren't going to be able to supply enough energy to be able to give meat to everybody. That is, assuming we even survive the climate change that it's causing. So by switching to a vegetarian diet, we reduce the need for a lot of the Earth's resources. Water, space, grain, all of that gets reduced by a lot just by us switching to a vegetarian diet. Finally, I want to end this whole talk with a little bit of a warning. If you do decide to go vegetarian, try to do it slowly. It's really hard to switch to a vegan diet right at the start. Try dedicating just 1 to 2 days a week to being vegetarian first. Also, make sure that you read up on a proper vegetarian diet. One mistake a lot of people make when they switch to being vegetarian is they don't actually check and see what are the foods that they need to supplement into their diet to make up for the lack of meat. Protein is the big one that everyone talks about, but it's not just protein that you have to worry about. There are a lot of other vitamins and minerals that you get from meat that you need to supplement in your new vegetarian diet. If you're really serious about going vegetarian, make sure you consult a nutritionist or a doctor. Going vegetarian is a great idea, but it does take some know-how, so make sure you do all the proper reading and the research that you need to become a successful vegetarian. Full disclosure, I am not vegetarian yet. I made this video because I wanted to look more into becoming vegetarian. I'm trying to become vegetarian. It is my goal to become vegetarian a couple of years into the future. Why? because I like living my life by my own values. For me, saving the environment is a huge thing for me. I want to save the environment. So becoming vegetarian is a very obvious and very good choice for me to make to help do that. But it's not something that's really easy to do. So I have done a lot to decrease the amount of meat that I eat. I also do Meatless Monday every single Monday. No meat on Mondays. Going vegetarian is something that is going to allow my life to be more in line with what I believe. And living a life that is more in line with our own values is something that we should all be aiming to do every single day. If living by your morals and your own personal values is something that is important to you, be sure that you hit that like button and that subscribe button down below for more tips and more advice from me on living your life to be more environmentally friendly. Every single like and subscribe that I get on my channel helps me so much. It motivates me to want to make these videos more, to help more people do the right thing for the environment. Be sure to leave a comment down below. I'm always going to reply to comments on my YouTube videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. Eugene and Verdant Growth, out. Getting ready for some vegetarian cooking, yeah! And now it's a vegetarian omelet. You guys know about natto? Oh man, yeah, that's natto for you. Slimy, so slimy. This guy loves natto too, don't you? Yeah, you do. Okay. Oh man, yummy. That's what I thought.